You're sitting across from someone. Maybe it's candlelight. Maybe it's just the glow of a phone screen. But somewhere in your chest, there's this feeling. A flutter, a warmth, a chemical cascade that your brain has decided means you're in love. You know the feeling. It's been anthologized in every song, every movie, every piece of poetry humanity has ever produced. But here's the question that probably never occurred to you, and well, now that I planted it. What was that feeling before all of that? Before songs, before movies, before we had a word for it, before we even had the concept. When a young woman in a hunter-gatherer camp 50,000 years ago looked at a specific man across a fire and felt that same flutter in her chest, what did she think was happening? Did she even think it was love? Or was love itself something we invented? Here's what we know. Love, as we experience it today, romantic love, the kind that dominates our culture, the kind that drives us to make irrational decisions, the kind that feels transcendent and world-altering, is not universal across all human societies. Even today, anthropologists studying contemporary hunter-gatherer groups have found communities where romantic love, as a concept, is barely recognized. Not because people don't form attachments, not because they don't have sex, but because they don't have a cultural framework that says this attachment is sacred, chosen, and the basis for permanent partnership. So either love is a recent invention, or it's ancient, and we've just expressed it in wildly different ways across time. The answer is more complicated than either option, and it has everything to do with understanding what love actually is, what it's for biologically, and how that purpose has shaped human civilization in ways most people haven't fully reckoned with. Let's start with the neurotransmitter, because that's where the story actually begins. The chemistry of ancient love. Love is not a feeling. This is important. Love is a cascade of chemicals. Primarily, we're talking about three: dopamine, oxytocin, and norepinephrine. When you're attracted to someone, your brain releases dopamine, which creates that reward sensation, that wanting, that obsessive thinking about the other person. It's the same chemical that makes gambling addictive. It's the same chemical that drives appetite. It's a wanting mechanism. Oxytocin comes later. Oxytocin is the bonding chemical. It's released during physical touch, during orgasm, during labor, during breastfeeding. It creates attachment. It creates the feeling that this person is yours and you are theirs. It's sometimes called the love hormone, but that's misleading because oxytocin doesn't actually care about love. Oxytocin cares about bonding. A mother oxytocin bonds to her infant. A wolf oxytocin bonds to its pack. It's an attachment mechanism, not a feeling. And norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is adrenaline adjacent. It heightens focus, increases heart rate, and makes you hyper-aware of the other person. It's what makes new love feel exciting and terrifying at the same time. Here's the thing that matters. All of these chemicals exist in humans. They existed in ancient humans. They did not require civilization to develop. They did not require poetry or music or the concept of romance. The neurotransmitters were there. So when a hominin 50,000 years ago looked at someone across a fire and felt that surge of dopamine, the desire, the obsessive thinking, something in their neural chemistry was identical to what you feel right now. The same chemical, the same mechanism. But what they did with that feeling, what it meant, what it implied about the future was entirely dependent on the society they lived in. And that's where it gets fascinating. Here's a distinction that anthropologists make, and it's crucial: the difference between sexual attraction and romantic love. Sexual attraction is ancient. It's clearly useful. It drives reproduction. The dopamine hit you get when you see someone attractive, that's evolution saying, this person has traits worth spreading. That mechanism is old. Very old. Probably as old as humans themselves. But romantic love, this idea that you choose one person, that you're supposed to feel transcendent about them, that your emotional fulfillment is dependent on their presence, that this attachment is the foundation of a permanent partnership. This is treated very differently across cultures and history. Some anthropologists argue that romantic love, as we know it, is basically a medieval European invention. That courtly love in 12th century France. This idea of a knight devoted to an unattainable lady, writing poetry about his longing, organizing his entire life around his desire. That's where romance as a concept was born. And then it got built into marriage. And then it got romanticized, literally, in novels and songs, and eventually became the dominant way that Western culture thinks about partnership. But that can't be the whole story, because the evidence suggests that ancient humans felt something like romantic love. We just don't know if they called it that. We don't know if they thought it should be permanent. We don't know if they believed it was a foundation for anything. Here's what we do know. In most pre-agricultural societies, partnership was practical. You chose, or were chosen by, someone with whom you could survive. Someone from a different band who could bring genetic diversity and alliance between groups. Someone who contributed to the group's survival. Someone who didn't drive you absolutely insane on a daily basis, though that was probably tertiary. The Maasai of Kenya have a word, emuzartat, which describes a beautiful, desired woman. But desirability and marriage are not the same thing. A woman can be emuzartat and be married to someone else for strategic reasons. The feeling and the partnership are decoupled. Among the Masua people of southwestern China, who practice what's called walking marriage, adults visit their romantic partners in the evening and return to their own homes before dawn. There's no cohabitation. There's no permanent partnership. But there is clearly romantic attachment, clear preference for certain partners, clear emotional investment. So the question becomes, what were ancient humans feeling, and what did they do with it? How ancient humans expressed attachment. Anthropologists have found evidence of something that looks a lot like love in the archaeological record. It's subtle, but it's there. In Neolithic burial sites, archaeologists have found couples buried together, sometimes for thousands of years after the first person died. The grave goods, the objects buried with the body, suggest intentional care. Objects that were valuable placed with the deceased. Positioning that suggests deliberate arrangement. In some cases, skeletons show signs of having been moved, repositioned, revisited. People returning to the grave. People spending time with the dead. This suggests something beyond practical partnership. This suggests emotional attachment significant enough to drive ritualistic behavior. There's also evidence in art. Paleolithic figurines, small carved object from 30,000 plus years ago. Some of them appear to depict couples holding hands, intertwined, positioned in ways that suggest intimacy. We don't know if these were objects of worship, fertility symbols, or representations of actual relationships. But the fact that humans were carving couples suggests that the pairing was conceptually important. But here's what's really interesting. The evidence suggests that in many ancient societies, romantic attachment and partnership were not the same thing. A young man might feel intense, dopamine-driven desire for a woman. That feeling was real. That feeling was recognized. But it might not result in partnership. He might marry someone else for strategic reasons. The woman he desired might marry someone her family chose. The feeling and the outcome were separate. In many pre-modern societies, this was just how it worked. Romantic love could exist as an experience, as something worth talking about, worth feeling intensely, but it was not the basis for the organization of your life. That was determined by family, by economics, by alliance, by genetics. Think about how strange that would feel from a modern perspective. To feel love and to be unable to act on it, or to act on it in secret, in stolen moments, while maintaining a partnership with someone else for public purposes. And yet, this was the reality for most of human history and most of human societies. The pivot point, when romantic love became the basis for partnership and the organizing principle of life, happened gradually and recently. It's a story that spans roughly the last 800 years in Europe, though it looks different in different places and is still not universal globally. In medieval Europe, marriage was a property arrangement. It was a contract between families. The feelings of the people getting married were irrelevant. A noblewoman might feel desperate affection for someone she couldn't marry. A man might desire a woman who had been promised to someone else. These feelings happened. They were sometimes even celebrated in poetry. But they didn't change the arrangement. The concept that romantic love should be the basis for marriage was genuinely radical when it emerged. It took centuries to become normal. In fact, it's only in the last 100 years or so that romantic love has become the dominant basis for marriage in the West. For most of history, even in Europe, most marriages were economic arrangements. Love, if it developed, was a bonus, a fortunate outcome, but not the foundation. What changed? A lot of things. Industrialization meant people could choose their own economic fate, so they didn't need to marry strategically. Urbanization meant you could meet people outside your family social circle. Literacy and novels meant you could consume stories that told you romantic love was a transcendent, world-altering experience worth organizing your entire life around. And those stories stuck. They still stick. The idea that somewhere there's one person, your soulmate, and that finding them and feeling that transcendent romantic love and building your life around them is the path to fulfillment. That narrative dominates modern Western culture. But it's a narrative. It's a recent narrative. And it's not universal. So next time you feel that flutter in your chest, next time you feel that surge of certainty that this person is the one, next time you're lying awake thinking about someone you desire, you're not experiencing something modern. You're not experiencing something unique to your culture. You're experiencing something ancient. Something your ancestors felt 50,000 years ago. Something they felt 100,000 years ago. Something that's written into your neurology, your evolution, your biology. But what you do with that feeling, what it means, what you expect it to become, that part is up to you. You have the freedom to organize your life around it in ways ancient humans didn't. You have the freedom to choose partnership based on love, something that was genuinely radical for most of human history. But you also have the freedom to be honest about what that feeling is, a temporary intensity designed to override your other priorities. A few years of chemical euphoria that will probably fade into something deeper and less exciting and probably more sustainable. And that's okay. That's not failure. That's just biology doing what it's always done. The flutter is real. But the forever part, that part you actually have to build. Like and subscribe.